Welcome to Innovations at A.P.A. We have a great session for you today. The purpose really is for you to learn about new technologies or new things happening in our space. Whether it is psychology, pure psychology and technology, or a blend of the two. I think today we have a great program for you today. We'll have two speakers, Ray Christian and Ilya Zeldin. We're going to speak about their particular solutions. One is focused on the mental health space, and that's Ray's, and the other one on the education area. So we'll do two presentations for each of them, then we'll have a panel discussion up here, and then I invite you to ask questions to both of them. So there's a mic over there that you'll need to turn on at that time. I'll try to repeat if it's not clear what the question is, but it's really just to have fun and to learn about what they're doing, what their experience have been, what questions you might have, how it might apply to us at A.P.A. Or to the community at large. Rob, there's a seat in the front. All right, so with that, I want to introduce Ray Christian from Textpert AI, who's going to be the first speaker today.
Thank you, Jasper. Thank you for having us. Okay, looks like we're all set. Hello. I'm Ray, and the CEO of Textpert, as Jasper mentioned. And when I was 20 years old, I kind of thought I was the man and thought I had things figured out. I was in college, pretty fit, somewhat social, and pretty good grades. And then my world kind of came crashing down when I got an autoimmune disorder. And I didn't treat it, and I got even more sick. From there, I had to drop out of school. That led to depression, and that led to a 10-year addiction to sleeping pills. And it turns out that overlap of mental disorders and addiction is actually very common. So before we dive in, I'll give you a quick little agenda. I'll talk a little bit about Textpert, what we're doing and why we're doing it, and then I'm going to introduce you to Amy, our avatar, and our AI. Do a quick demo so you'll get to see her. So what's going on right now in the world of addiction? You have technology issues and the opioid epidemic, which we all know about. $504 billion annual cost just in the US. 2.1 million Americans are addicted, and it's killing 64,000 each year. That's more people than car accidents. In the world of mental health, mental disorders are costing us $467 billion. And almost half of that alone, just depression and anxiety at 210. All told, you have 16 million Americans that are sick. And it turns out this $1 trillion problem actually has a massive amount of overlap. So if you think about the experience of physical pain and emotional pain, quite different. But it turns out that the neural paths for both are the exact same. So what happens is you have, let's say somebody injures their knee, they're also depressed. They go get Percocets as pain relief for post-surgery. They do the rehab, knee gets better, but they're still dealing with mental distress. So in that scenario, just like any natural person, they're going to seek relief. And they'll probably do that from what's been working lately, the opioids. So that can lead to 10, 20, 50% more consumption, which pushes them over that addiction threshold. So you can see why and how overlapped this problem is. So this $1 trillion problem, and what's our best defense currently for objective tracking? The questionnaire. BDI, MMPI, PHQ-9, GAD, it's a sea of acronyms, cutting edge technology from the 1930s. The problem is, as useful as they are, they lack tone in the mental health space, they lack nuance, and they're black and white. But the brain is gray. And what comes from the brain is an infinite number of shades of gray. So questionnaires by themselves are not going to be the answer. Well, what if we can see a psychologist or a therapist in person? We're good, right? Well, The challenge is, even if it's the best psychologist in the world, we're all subject to a bad day that leads to bias. Or we all have memory loss. In addition, there's vague reporting language that can change over time, even with the same person. But the biggest issue is this growing shortage of mental health professionals, which we all know about. So mental health professionals alone cannot do this. So if we could wave a magic wand and get to the promised land with a solution, what would that look like? Well, a few key factors. One, the tool would be able to observe a patient just like a psychologist does or a therapist does. Facial expression, prosody, speech content. Additionally, you want to be able to collect data, thousands, millions of patients, and all the nuances of each patient. You'd want impeccable memory, and of course, just like every product, we want it to be fast, accessible, and inexpensive. So, meet Amy. Cutting-edge AI to decode emotion. AI for mental health and for addiction. You can do it at the doctor's office. The patient can do it at their house. You have access to this cutting-edge machine learning technology, and all you need is a laptop with a webcam and a microphone. It's a 5-minute interactive evaluation that monitors the patient's facial expressions, vocal prosody, and speech content.
What is vocal prosody?
Timbre, inflection, tonality. And so this is where we are right now. We actually just finished our validation study, just wrote our first paper, actually. We had 750 participants take the test as part of this study, almost a terabyte of proprietary training data to train Amy, 950 gigabytes, and just under 20,000 hours of R&D that went into this one paper. And we actually had a couple breakthroughs recently where we hit 90% specificity and sensitivity on our neural network prediction accuracy. And here you see the team. You've got proven B2B exceptional sales experience. You've got an AI exit already under the team's belt. You have a transcendent AI engineer. On the advisory side, we have world-class expertise in both machine learning and psychiatry, and also strategy. Terry Kramer, for instance, used to actually advise Obama, and now he advises us, which is just what a mitzvah. So the PAs to resistance, though, is my co-founder, Zeke, who you see in the middle. He is this transcendent AI engineer, coding since 11, kind of like Zuckerberg and Bill Gates. He dropped out when he was a freshman because he had so many job offers. And he is the architect for this very complex neural network. Here you see some of our partners. We work with Cedars-Sinai, a group called TeenLine, Jewish Big Brothers Big Sisters, and you see some of our other institutional partners as well. Some market validation for our brand and some of our favorite partners that have made us who we are now. So our goal is to change this paradigm in mental health and addiction from relying on questionnaires for mental health. So we believe it's time for a change. It's time to give therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists an ability to scale their reach, to triage patient care. It's time to give health networks, insurance companies, hospitals an ability to properly assess mental health and claims fast and effectively, especially over time. It's time for Amy. So, without further ado, let's introduce you to Amy.
Going to lead you through a series of questions. Please answer honestly and note that your responses will be completely confidential.
So this is Amy. AIME, Artificial Intelligence Mental Evaluation. And forgive the lack of sync for the audio and video, minor issue. But the idea was we turned out that we researched all the accents, and British accents are actually the most trusted. So it was an obvious choice. And we wanted Amy to be confident and competent, interested and interesting. And that's how we built her. So the idea was this test This exam can be done, as I mentioned, at the doctor's office, can be done at the house. And what happens is, as the user jumps into this interactive test, they can finish in 5 minutes and then go see the doctor. So they do it before, while they're in the waiting room, or they take the test at the house for the visit, or after. So let's dive into the meat of the test. First, we have a quick demographics. And this is anonymous, but there's a couple key factors I want to mention because they were shown to have a high correlation with addiction and mental health disorders. Education level and employment status, both. And even the placement of this test was actually, this demographics questionnaire was strategic because we wanted the whole test to be an increase in intimacy, an increase in momentum to get the person talking. Kind of like the idea of if I walk up to you on the street and say, hey, are you happy? I'm not going to get a good response. But if we have coffee for 45 minutes and then I ask that, much more likely to get an honest response. And this test was designed to be focused on 3 key elements: ease, trust, and simplicity. And what you'll see coming up is fun, it's cool UX, hopefully you like it, nice UI, but the really cool stuff is the underpinning neural network technology. It's known as deep learning. So without further ado, let's do a quick hardware check. We're going to skip this since we're in demo mode. This is allowing, you can see me here, this is allowing the user to make sure everything is working. All you need, as I mentioned, microphone and a webcam. And the cool part is there's auto-validation technology. So the technology knows whether the exam was completed correctly or not. No human intervention. So let's dive in.
How have you been feeling lately?
So it's 8 core questions, all evocative questions, and the user responds for a minimum of 15 seconds, a maximum of 60. And this test was designed
Tell me how your sleep has been lately.
to be fast,
What else is going on today?
easy,
What are you looking forward to in the near future?
friendly,
What's been frustrating you lately?
clear,
What do you think is causing your problems?
non-judgmental,
How would you describe the impact your life has on the world around you?
and you'll notice the increasing level of intimacy.
Whom do you wish you had a better relationship with, and what would make it better?
And the general idea is we want to get people talking about themselves and about their own mental health, to reduce some of the stigma around talking about yourself and your own mental health. The idea is that they will then come into the visit with a little bit more candor because they've gotten a few reps in about talking about themselves. So now we'll skip to part B, which is a self-diagnostic.
Are you currently treating depression with a mental health professional?
So we want to get them talking about depression,
Are you currently treating anxiety with a mental health professional?
anxiety, and we get them asking, we ask twice. We notice that if you ask the same question twice in a little bit of a different way, oftentimes it's that second time you get a much more clear answer.
Has a mental health professional diagnosed you with depression in the past? Has a mental health professional diagnosed you with anxiety in the past?
So 2 chances to talk about both depression and anxiety, and then a final question on abuse.
Have you ever been treated for substance abuse or dependence?
So this is obviously an uncomfortable topic, so it's good to have this on camera because we establish a baseline of the mannerisms, tone shifts, and how the person interacts. And that's it for the video portion of the test. Now, it's a quick questionnaire that's laced into this A.P.A test. You'll probably recognize it's PHQ-9. So the useful part about that is not only is it just another piece of data, this is also labeling for the machine learning training data. And I don't know how much you guys know about AI, but one of the most difficult parts is to label the data. Usually you have to hand label it, which is labor intensive and manual and just a pain in the butt. So we wanted to avoid that. We have a quick questionnaire here on physical and sexual abuse, another high correlated task or area, I should say, for mental health and addiction. And then finally, we have GAD-7, which you're probably familiar with. Well, she just thanked us for participating. You didn't hear it, but trust me. So that's it for what the user would see. And if it's done at the house, this would auto-collapse from here. Or if it's at the doctor's office, it reroutes to that home screen. And then the next user can take the test. since we're in the admin mode, now we get to see, let's say it was John Doe that took the test. What did his test results look like? And here it is. So you finally have a standardized, objective, and highly precise measurement of depression, anxiety, and addiction risk. And you've got these auto-generated verbal descriptions to go along with these highly precise gauges that are easy to understand and user-friendly. But let's say we want to dig a little bit deeper. Let's go to the evaluation timeline. The cool part about this is that you can actually see the gauges moving in real time when I start the video. So let's say you want to dig a little bit deeper, you want to watch the video to corroborate the visit you just had with the patient, and you want to see where exactly the neural network flagged that risk level spike. You'll see it in the gauges here, and you'll also see it in these prediction pulse readings, as we call it. Let's dive in.
Been feeling pretty good lately. Things are moving along with with my startup. Making great progress, great technical progress. Put together a lot of cool stuff, and we're going to be releasing a real product soon.
So that's Zeke, that's the aforementioned CTO. And now you get an idea of what you can see in real time. And you can call on this report anytime you want. So that's a single report. Let's take a quick look at the dashboard. And this is where the real meat and potatoes are. And this is it. So you finally have an ability over time to track with high precision and objectivity mental health progress and risk of addiction. So a lot of functionality here. You can add a new participant quite easily. You can send this person, 23949, a quick new evaluation. You have this line graph format here, and I'll go through that in a second, but you have a depression, anxiety, and opioid addiction risk indicator. Whenever there's been one test, let's say we just added a new user, we can send that person a new test. Let's say we want to do a tag as well. For easy searching, you can easily input that tag. But the really cool part is you can see when and potentially why changes occurred. So let's see here, this depression risk level went from 32% to 64%. What happened in that last month? Was there a treatment protocol change? Did something happen in their personal lives? Was there something to note? Conversely, anxiety dropped from 59% to 12%. What happened? You can finally get insights on that. And let's say you want to figure out exactly what happened, takes you right back to the test. So this is machine learning at the vanguard, and our goal is to give mental health professionals a tool, as I mentioned, that lets them scale their reach and triage patient care. Instead of only seeing 10 patients a week, you can actually keep tabs on 50. This is going to be the blood test, the MRI of mental health and addiction. And our goal is to lead a seismic shift in how we track and assess mental health and addiction. Groundbreaking technology, and I'm the dumbest guy on the team, so I get to say that. And it's easy, it's simple, hopefully a little bit of fun as well. So that's the test, and that's it. So thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks, Ray. Fascinating stuff. So if you can get mic'd up over there, then Ilya Zeldin can talk about Tonomi. So we're moving from the mental health space to education. So Ilya's company addresses a very different area, and hope you find it equally exciting as what Ray just talked about. There are a few more seats in the front. 2, 3, those who want to sit. You have a question?
Yes.
So we'll do, if it's a logistical kind of question or about the session, then maybe we can address it now. If you have a question specifically for Ray, then I would suggest that we just let Ilya do his presentation too, and then we'll come back and do questions to both of them. Yeah?
Yeah, but I hear you. I have questions for you too. Yeah, that was amazing, fantastic, and it couldn't be more different than what Tanomi is doing. And so I think it's pretty exciting that we're here today, because the common denominator is really this often ambiguous study of psychology and social psychology, and how entrepreneurs are able to rely on that, but really apply their technology know-how or just their innovation to scale it out, to give it a different angle, and to hopefully add a little bit more beauty to life. I wanted to, I see it's, okay, cool, thank you. I wanted to start my presentation with a little bit of my own background, and kind of connected to the world of entrepreneurship, especially when it comes to not just the pure technical solutions, but the solutions that are actually relying on old school methodologies, and really the technology is only as good as when it's applied to something that's meaningful. For me personally, this idea of bringing something from concept to life is not only an idea that every entrepreneur has to go through. You know, they say that there's an idea is a dime a dozen, but actually doing something is what takes an effort. But it's also, for me, it was, the concept of America as something that needed to be brought to life for me, because my parents immigrated as refugees into the United States almost 30 years ago into New York. And so I was 15 years old. It was a perfect age where you don't have to survive, because my parents were doing that on my behalf. I just had to go to school, and I had to learn English and kind of create the new reality. And I think America is amazing because it allows people to dream, right? I certainly came from the environment where that was less possible, or almost not possible. And then once you start dreaming, of course, and it also ties into this whole entrepreneurial spirit of actually doing something, you quickly realize that, all right, well, taking concept to reality is nice, but the actual proof that somebody needs your ideas and needs your innovation is when these concepts become actually somebody else is willing to pay you for the work that you've done. So from concept to profitability is almost a brand new, a separate leap. And so from my point of view, I've built 3 companies. Some were successful, some were less successful from the profitability point of view. I've also led the global business unit for Dell, managing a very large kind of portfolio of solutions. And really, during this transitional time when the consumption of software was moving away from one-time perpetual type of a purchase and more into pay-as-you-go that we now take for granted. But of course, for large organizations, it really creates a fairly monumental challenge of how do you kind of move from the transactional model into a more solution or consultative approach when it comes to your products and services. And so for me, what I've been able to experience was a lot of opportunities to either build my own teams or become part of other people's teams. And what I quickly realized is how bad organizations are, almost as bad as individuals, at having this idea of awareness about themselves, about the people they work with, and how at the same time critical it is. Because if we kind of look at ourselves, we're really good at, if you kind of go back to the foundation of why I was invited to speak to you guys, the social psychology tells us that we're really good at assessing others. We're really good at understanding people in front of us and kind of nuances of all those soft skills and behaviors. And we're really bad at applying the same concept to ourselves. We all think that, or by and large, we think that we're better drivers than the average person. We have a better sense of humor. We're better leaders than the average person. And these are really, really difficult concepts to measure and to kind of make sense of, and at the same time they're critical, because if you look at the HR space, right, how companies find people to work for them, as much money has been put into that space, we're still seeing that on average people will leave at a 50% higher rate during the first 12 years than the overall company's attrition rate. Why is that? We're putting so much effort, we're putting so much data into the recruiting process, but we're still focusing on functional skills. We're still focusing on, I don't know, college names and all those keywords in the resume. We're not focusing on this idea of a fit between people. It creates all kinds of emotional problems for people, and certainly creates billions and billions of dollars in economic losses for organizations. So I wanted to create, I wanted to help people become a little bit better aware. And back then, these Q&A platforms were proliferating, but they were mostly geared towards like really stupid ideas, like, you know, do these shoes look good? Do I look thin or fat, or whatever? And I wanted to help people think about the kinds of skills and the kinds of competencies that they struggle with, that they've, the kinds of things where people often lack self-confidence to make important decisions and live with those consequences. So the idea behind to know me, to know yourself, is to really put this idea of awareness right in the middle between the skills that we all, the tacit knowledge that we all bring into our workplace, and the learning that's meant to improve the skills and outcomes. And so you'll notice kind of two important concepts here. One is that I personally don't care about students. I care about the adult side of learning. I think we are already focusing all the intellectual effort and the tons of investment into helping students, but we are completely disrespecting adults when it comes to their own learning needs. And the second concept is that as a platform, to know me is, in a sense, content agnostic. We just want to be right in the middle of that process of having appropriate content that's based on reliable frameworks when it comes to the diagnosing of skills and competencies, and acknowledging that there's plenty of excellent content, plenty of smart people that have already created professional development, professional learning, and all those other acronyms by which we kind of call learning itself. So I wanted to recognize that all this great content exists and take a half a step back and actually ask a question, well, who needs what kind of learning in the first place? Because if we can figure that out and get the participants engaged and involved in these sort of topical areas, then we can really increase their buy-in and increase their retention when it comes to the actual learning that we ask people to go through. And so from that point of view, it was a decision of sort of where to now build a business, which industry to focus on. And it really didn't take a whole lot of time to really appreciate this disconnect that we have in education, where there are systemic challenges in the education industry when it comes to supporting teachers, where we have this growing skills gap between the way teachers are prepared to leverage technology in the classroom and the skills, that sort of tech nativeness that kids bring into their classroom environment. And so for that reason, I want to focus the rest, the example really of To Know Me implementation on how we help teachers. Just a quick kind of context, right? We spend $8 billion in the United States on helping teachers. It kind of varies from district to district. Most of it is kind of, you know, from federal to state to district levels. So we somewhere between $500,000 and $18,000 per teacher per year. It depends on how wealthy your district is and how much you're able to get from different technology companies that are really willing to throw a whole lot of software and hardware your way. If you ask teachers how impactful the learning is, 56% say that there's no positive impact from training, right? So a lot of the time, and this is pretty consistent with adult learning in general, most of it is done to sort of check off the box. The accountability is at the level of man hours spent training, not at the impact that this training yielded. And so we have teachers that are fundamentally struggling with how technology changes their classroom. We have training that is either a sort of one-size-fits-all, regardless of the competency level, or the other side of training, which is really kind of coaching, right? One-on-one mentorship, which has proven to be the most effective way of helping teachers, but it's not scalable. It's very expensive. It's not scalable. The districts have a hard time understanding the competency level across their teachers' cohort, so they tend to hire experts, expensive experts from the outside. The cost balloon, then they scale it down to one size fits all, and the cycle continues. So all the while we ask teachers to differentiate learning for their students in the classroom, teachers themselves very rarely get targeted training that really reflects their needs. And their needs are quite great because very few teachers, especially when it comes to technology, right? There's sort of instructional knowledge, like how well do you know biology or math or whatever, and how well can you teach, right? So especially when it comes to pedagogy, the soft skills of teaching, that is the area where teachers really need to upgrade their skills, because very rarely do teachers have any kind of informal training, formal training before they in the teacher preparation environment, and very rarely do teachers have actual life experience implementing technology in the classroom. So the general expectations, and this is again why I kind of draw the analogy with adults in general, is that, hey, you're an adult, you'll just wing it, right? You'll figure it out. Except that we know that that's actually not the case. And so teachers are becoming this natural bottleneck between millions and millions of dollars that we're putting into the system in the form of devices and hardware and all kinds of technology gadgets, and the massive impact that we expect this investment to make onto our students, except it doesn't, because you have a human element right in the middle that's ill-equipped and doesn't have the types of skills that will help them teach successfully using technology. What we did for our initial solution is we found a framework, a set of standards, right? We certainly don't, we were a data management company. It has to do with skills. We're not inventors of or experts in what is appropriate. So instead, there's an organization called ISTE, International Society for Technology in Education. It's one of several. They developed a set of standards, which are really kind of documented in a 2-page PDF. Right? Oh, teachers need to be excelling in as learners, as leaders, as citizens, collaborators, designers, facilitators, and analysts. And then they sort of go into the different indicators of what each of these means. So teachers need to inspire creativity in the classroom. Great. What does it mean? What does it mean to inspire creativity? Who does it? Who doesn't? How do you help those that don't? Those are all the concepts that are sort of left out of this general PDF. And so what we did is we took these ambiguous, soft concepts, broke them down into their bite-sized situations. In other words, what kinds of situations do teachers go through, or do teachers use technology in their classroom in order to become a better learner, right? What kind of situations do they go through that exemplifies their leadership ability? So there's a layer between the high-level concept like a learner, the sub-skills of learner, such as goal setting, professional learning, lifelong learning, and the actual questions that teachers go through as a reflection exercise to reflect on how they use technology in the classroom. And the result of that is twofold. You have the opportunity for teachers to enhance their own self-awareness, because they understand sort of that they can excel in some areas and really need support in others. They have this understanding in context to other educators. And then, of course, for the administrators, and it's an opportunity to clarify who needs what and be able to be very precise in the allocation of resources to each. I'd like to show you just this quick 2-minute video that explains how the solution works, and then I'll wrap up.
The quality of teachers is paramount. No other measured aspect of schools is nearly as important in determining student achievement. Even an average teacher can improve students' lifetime earnings by $250,000 compared to a mediocre teacher. Are you noticing teachers are frustrated with how technology changes their classroom? So how do you ensure all teachers are prepared to learn and teach in the digital age? It's not only devices and software. We expect teachers to differentiate learning for their students, and yet we do not do the same for our teachers. Similar to other professionals, teachers need a proper way to upgrade their skills for something they likely didn't learn in teacher preparation. Enter Tonomi. Tonomi is a technology platform that personalizes learning plans to each individual teacher based on their skills, strengths, and gaps. By shifting focus away from evaluation of teachers toward their development, our approach helps teachers enhance self-awareness about critical skills in the classroom. Teachers discover how their self-perception compares to actual practice in relative context to other teachers in the community. The software collects and analyzes skills data to truly personalize professional learning to every teacher. With our flexible platform, school administrators can finally manage and optimize virtually every element of their professional learning programs. Leadership can support development of teachers in an efficient, cost-saving, and data-supported way. With Tonomi, school districts can measure skill readiness to make smarter purchase and training decisions, identify internal skill leaders to empower growth, make sure that each teacher gets the right training to address skill gaps, and optimize investment in professional learning to improve student outcomes. See for yourself why Reimagine Education recognized Tonomi with a Gold Award for our work with educators. Start your free trial today at Tonomi/free trial.
Cool. So to reiterate, it's kind of weird that that the innovation that Tonomi is being recognized for is because we've created a learner-centric design. Right? In this case, it's a teacher-centric. It's because when it comes to adults, and I kind of go back to the earlier theme, it kind of feels like we don't respect the adults' learning needs. We don't spend enough time understanding what they are, and as a result, we're really seeing a lot of consequences that are detrimental to individual people and to organizational health. And so, in the context of supporting teachers, just to reiterate, while being learner-centric, the software enhances self-awareness for individual teachers. It helps them highlight the areas that need support or areas where they're already strong, and ultimately it uses the data to personalize professional development based on whatever inventory of learning a particular client has, right? So Tonomi doesn't really write our own content, but we're essentially a librarian in the library of learning content, which may come from our partners, from the district itself, from teachers' own resources. And at the same time, we're selling to administrators, right? We're selling to administrators to support their teachers, to kind of facilitate this cultural shift away from what is typically a punitive assessment and more toward collaborative development, so that the administrators can understand and really clarify who needs what kind of learning in the first place. And then they can use our platform to personalize learning for every teacher at scale. And even that really begets the foundation to finally add some level of accountability to learning. Right, to really sort of figure out what learning makes the greatest impact both on teachers and on student outcomes. The purpose of the platform is to sort of be at a layer above all these different learning management systems and all these different content repositories. It's really because we're learner-centric, we're able to provide a unified learning experience that really connects teachers to content no matter where it is, and then be able to support administrators in helping next level decisions about teachers, right? So it starts out with a needs assessment, but then it evolves into a sustained lifelong experience, which is exactly what we kind of need from the adults. And I'm particularly excited about meeting this audience because you are at the forefront of having amazing content and amazing theories about what helps people, and I think it's the job of us, the technology entrepreneurs, to be able to scale that content all under a pretty simple but powerful hypothesis, which is that upfront awareness, when coupled with personalized learning, leads to better outcomes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ilya. That's great. If you can get mic'd up. Your point about teachers and sort of enabling creativity in the kids made me think about my daughter who went back to school yesterday, and her English AP teacher actually had the entire classroom like a jungle, with like the "In the Jungle," or whatever that song in the background. She said that was a little weird, and maybe that's what he was after, sort of to inspire creativity in the classroom and just to get people to open up. She definitely, that was the one teacher she talked about, so that was, I think, is an important piece. But in both these cases, you saw the things that we're doing, trying to improve people's lives, that both these entrepreneurs have used technology to help guide. We had wanted to do a little bit of panel discussion, but I think we should just open it up, because I don't want to cut you short. Josephine already had her hand up after the first conversation, so I want to get sort of in the background the two sort of solutions, so you have a reference point there. And I think that's, I want to open it up for questions. And I can repeat yours if you talk loud enough, but there's also a mic in the middle for people to go to. But I'll repeat it. As long as I hear, then I can repeat it.
So the first question is, well, actually, since we're talking for explain your presentation, which is cool. So you currently sell A.P.A style, and with that, I was thinking, like, how do you get teachers who normally teach old school ways to learn how to use technology like this? Is really cool to bring those teachers back who's been teaching for over 30 years or whatever, and always been by the book, literally, papers and handouts.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do you
That's
get
great.
to learn and to want to be a learner again?
Great. So and maybe as context, so A.P.A has had the publication manual is one of our sort of most important contributions in the book space, but sharing our knowledge. And we recently launched a new product that uses some of that, the reputation that we have in that area, but really to build better writers for students, particularly in undergraduate students. But Josephine is asking about this. We're introducing a new tool. How are the teachers accommodating to that? So can you expand, Ilya, a little bit on your experience and how your tool might help those teachers?
I'll try. Excellent question, though. The elements of a successful learning program for adults are fairly well known, right? It's measure internal skill readiness, give people choice in what they learn, provide them ongoing support. So there's 6 elements in total. And the way that Tonomi works with publishers and other partners that are providing professional development services or providing their content is by doing the heavy lifting of actually engaging people, collecting the data, immersing them through our user experience into the results of the information that they contribute. And while at the same time allowing our administrative platform owners, whether it's a publisher or somebody who's doing the training, to first of all dictate, well, what are we looking for in people? What are the skills that we're looking for, right? If nothing else, Tonomi is not rigid. I showed you a specific methodology based on the ISTE framework, so that's pretty kind of self-contained. But as a platform, you can upload your own diagnostics, you can upload your own learning, and sort of the system will connect them in the middle. So I think that to answer your question, I think it's really important to show people the results of their feedback. Too often we ask people to answer some kind of an assessment like, great, thanks, somebody will get back to you in 2 weeks, right? And so I think in general with adults, the concept of assessments or evaluations tends to be punitive, it tends to be kind of detrimental. And of course, we're trying to shift that dynamic and almost and kind of attack that level of interest, the level of coming in the middle between the skills that I think I know or the skills that I think are going to be important in my success and what the organization expects of me. We at least to know me with this approach, we're trying to bridge the two in the middle, recognizing that the two are quite often very different.
Yeah, that's great. Great. Questions for Ray. Chris.
Ray, first of all, I wanted to say that was an amazing product that you presented. I had two questions about it. Number one, you said that Amy analyzes like your voice inflections and body language. Is it actually evaluating the content of what the people are saying that is ailing them, or what, whatever their answers to the question are? Is it actually evaluating the content of their answers? Number one. And number two, I'm pretty sure you are, but is this already available for like mobile platforms? Because obviously everyone's not walking around with a laptop, but tablets and cell phones, the possibilities are endless. So just had those questions.
Sure, and thank you for the kind words. The second question, we're not yet mobile. That is going to be 2019. Obviously, we know how important that is. But to your first question, it's kind of interesting because we figured what the people tend to say and what we all communicate through words, it's kind of counterintuitive, but the body language and the tone actually taught Amy way more. So natural language processing, AI, is a cutting edge field just in the last few years we're starting to learn a lot about, whereas that NLP, as they call it, can actually understand sentiment, positive or negative, coherence, and logic. But that accounted for about 15% of the learnings of our neural network. It's called an ensemble neural network. So there's multiple neural networks together, kind of like our brain is an ensemble neural network. But it turned out that the body language was actually like 60% of what led to the predictions. Tonality was close to 25%, and the remaining amount was actually what they're saying. So it did actually have a piece, but far less than we expected.
That's amazing. It reminds me actually of, I'm not sure what police show that was, but it was looking at the interviewees behind the glass and then turned the sound off, just only look at the body language. I forgot what that was, but that reminded me of that. But excellent question. Other question. Okay, you have a
quick postscript on that. We had one of our breakthroughs in our neural network accuracy was by accident. So we have this massive file. It's a video file that's 5 to 10 minutes long. It's a lot. And we have to process that and feed the neural network, feed Amy, as it were. And so we said, maybe let's downsample it and reduce the resolution. And it'll make it a little bit easier to process through our servers. And it turned out that led to one of our biggest breakthroughs in accuracy, which for us was really counterintuitive. We didn't understand it. We figured high def's got to be clear. You got to see every pixel. And we started to think about it, and we realized that sometimes when we look at someone or interact, like if I look deep in your eyes, into your soul right now, that might help in a certain way. But sometimes if we soften the gaze and look at the whole picture of Jasper, it's a little bit more informative. It's a beautiful picture. That was kind of surprising.
No, good. I like it. Other question.
For Ray, I was wondering what kind of body language exactly Amy evaluates. Is it sort of, because I'm not sure how much. Thank you. My question is about the body language that Amy evaluates, and because I'm not sure how much it varies what the camera is capturing from person to person. So, I don't know how much arm movement really gets in there. Is it, someone looking down, or, just sort of wondering what she's looking for.
Sure. So the quick and dirty answer is eyes, mouth, and head. So she looks at eye movement, so we call that eye mapping. So what is the speed and frequency with which they look away, look down, look up, locked eyes with the camera, also pupil dilation, and then with the mouth, the number of smiles, the number of frowns, the number of non-activity with the mouth, and then head movement. Is there a pattern of looking up, looking down, looking left, looking right? And this is, as you can imagine, this quickly escalates to a massive amount of data. So that's already 3 parameters I just talked about, and many different movements with each. And what Amy does is, and what AI in general is really good at doing, is sussing out the noise. So what's the noise and what's the actual beef here? And what's the real meat and potatoes of it? And so that's what she does. So the attention, we can see kind of heat maps of what she's looking at, and it's eyes, mouth, and then also head in total.
I actually have a quick question for both.
Yeah, go ahead.
First of all, for Tanomi, based on what you presented, it looked like it was mostly geared toward K-12 educators. Have you thought about what that looks like in a higher ed space and evaluated higher ed instructors and what that professional development path and learning path would look like?
So one question is Tanomi applicable to, in all educational settings?
Yeah. And then for Ray, quickly, you talked about researching Amy's accent. Was there research going in to make her a woman? Are we more comfortable talking and sharing our feelings with her being female?
You go first.
Could you repeat the question for the audience?
Sure. I think you asked, clearly recognizing that this was an example for K-12 teachers, how applicable is the platform or other types of approaches to higher education. So 100%, it's applicable. We work with what's kind of like an evolving field of faculty management at higher ed, and different methodologies, different kind of rubrics, if you will. In the same way, we also are beginning to work with kind of the oldest students, right? So actually, college is a great example where we have freshman year students coming in that are more and more ill-equipped to handle the pressures of college life. The skills that are lacking are often pretty fundamental. Your patience, your focus, your resilience, right? So, it's one idea is to help students kind of go through this the first time of uncertainty and uber independence and sort of come out on top. The flip side of that equation is the graduating students. So we know that employers are screaming foul for not seeing students with your basic soft skills like problem thinking, collaboration, so it's the same idea. In empowering students to understand the different situations that require certain kind of best practice of responses in teamwork and communication and so on. And then, of course, at that point, using the data, using the technology to actually now be the matchmaker between the student in the career, managed through the career management office and the employers that are seeking interns or employees with certain skills that are rarely being measured now.
Great. And so the question for Ray, if you could repeat the question, I didn't hear that.
I think it was why a woman?
Yeah, was there research behind making her?
So it was a little bit of a confluence of events with as we built the name and we saw the phonetic use case, that made a lot of sense, but probably the more important reason was we found in that research was that it was more easy and more disarming to chat and open up to a woman in general.
Research-based. Some question. We need to. I'm looking at the time. I think the Ray's email address dropped off that one. I'll share with everyone Ilya and Ray's email addresses so you can ask follow-up questions. I'm assuming you guys are good with that, since I've just made that commitment. Go ahead.
My question's for Ray, and could also be in my other program as well. Since it's 2019 and we're dealing with a lot of AI, even in our pockets there's AI, and common occurrences regarding, Alexa automatically calling someone, what assurances do you have for the user to protect their identity?
Okay.
You did say confidential, it is confidential and encrypted, but nowadays that's not enough.
Great. So a question around security, privacy, and how you maintain and protect both.
So we're working with hospital networks and insurance companies, telemedicine brands, and rehab clinics. And so we're working with them for the actual implementation as it interacts with their clients. So it's a little bit of a collaboration, but at the very basic level, everything is HIPAA compliant. And secondly, we were very specific in that test you just saw, you actually don't input any personally identifiable information. There's no name, address, or anything else. So we assign a unique ID, and our client would know that person's name, and then it links to that ID. We actually never see their name. And it's also kept confidential. So it's kind of two layers of security.
Okay. Ilya, on your side?
Same idea in the sense that everything is encrypted, everything we hosted on AWS, following the best data protection policies and guidelines. Having said that, we're in a pretty favorable spot because it's one thing like how you actually, what steps do you take as a company to protect data, and it's another thing what's required of you. So at some point we made a business decision to focus on the adult side of education, meaning that we don't have to be involved in a whole lot of systems-related certifications and guidelines, and because we're not dealing with students. So that helps, nevertheless, obviously being very protective of the identity. In fact, the entire platform with one checkbox can be completely anonymized. So even if you're, as a teacher, you're providing feedback that's meant to personalize your professional learning, it's possible for the administrators to not see any individual results at all.
I see our general counsel nodding.
You know, and because I was thinking, boy, you get people with pushback who would be concerned about, you're evaluating my skills and you're not going to share that with HR, right? For teachers, particularly.
This is a critical, so like obviously you probably noticed that Tonomi can be used as an HR tool. Right? I spent some time talking about the impetus of Tonomi coming from this kind of upside down recruitment, right? It's a very nuanced thing that when it comes to teachers, we are not positioning this as a hiring tool at all. We are strictly speaking positioning it as a development opportunity. And in fact, it's, you know, every superintendent of a decent-sized school district is akin to a CEO of the mid-sized or large organization, and they know in their heart that in order to build a successful company, they need to separate employability from development. But because of the kind of dynamics especially in the education industry, often that's not the case. So that often is, in fact, a barrier to an immediate kind of appreciation of what Tonomi can bring, because on the one hand, we want to empower teachers, we want to personalize their learning. On the other hand, some of the ingrained processes and union relationships really sort of are in the way. But to accommodate one district leader who was really gun-ho about making sure that his teachers buy into this new way to personalize their learning, it's for that, rather through that feedback, we added the functionality where even the administrators get the benefit of kind of the platform interpreting and using the analytics to interpret the data and recommend subsequent steps, but at no point can you actually get to the name of the person who's providing the data.
Great. Well, I want to be cognizant of everyone's time. It's noon. This has been fantastic. I really liked it. Thank you for coming. Follow up with questions. If you don't want to send them directly to Ilya and Ray, send them to me. I'll pass them on. Thank you for your attendance, and see you at the next innovation at A.P.A.